Welcome to Truthwatchers. I am Heath Henning. I was recently asked about how to witness to Jehovah Witnesses. I assume most people are simply not well acquainted with what Jehovah Witnesses actually believe. This can cause a lot of confusion when speaking with one because they can use the same terminology, but there is obviously some disconnect. That is because they use different definitions to the terminology we are used to. That is true for practically any cult that exists. They will have their own definitions to the terminology we are used to from reading the Bible and hearing sermons preached. The changed definitions are one of the major ways they deceive people. But if you're talking to them and it seems like you're saying the same thing, but you're not getting anywhere in that conversation, this is likely why. You are using the same vocabulary, but you're understanding things completely differently because there are different definitions for the terms being used in the conversation. So I'm going to share what I think has been the most effective way to witness to Jehovah Witnesses in my experiences. So this is not going to be some deep theological discussion or delving into anything technical. We're not going deep into the doctrines of Jehovah Witnesses. If you want that, there are many books written about Jehovah Witnesses, and maybe in the future I could do some stuff about different cults. But I'm just going to share something that I think is very practical, and I'm purposely keeping it simple so that it can be easily remembered. Today, I'm going to be quoting from the New World Translation, which is the Jehovah Witness Bible version. I am using their most recent revision from 2013. Most cults will make claims that their Bible version is the most accurate. So when you can use their own publications to prove they're wrong, they have no argument against that. I actually own 3 different revisions from the Jehovah Witness cult of their Bible. Obviously, they have to keep revising it. This is the 1980s. This other one was the 1970s, and this is 2013. They have to keep revising their Bible because they're realizing that their doctrines don't fit what the Bible actually reads, so they keep revising it, trying to make it conform closer and closer to their own doctrines. This Bible version, 2013 New World Translation, is likely the most corrupted version in English. Any of their versions are, whatever revision it is. But if you were witnessing to a Jehovah Witness and used a different Bible, they would ignore anything you say because they think their version is the only accurate one available in English. So showing that their Bible refutes their doctrine is very effective for multiple reasons. Looking at the book of Revelations, chapter 7, verse 9, we read, quote, "After this I saw and look a great crowd, which no man was able to number, out of all nations and tribes and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, dressed in white robes, and there were palm branches in their hands." Unquote. The context is verses 4 through 8, discussing the various tribes of Israel. 12,000 from each tribe was sealed, making the total of 144,000. Most of us are aware that Jehovah Witnesses claim that only 144,000 will go to heaven. That is not to say that only 144,000 will be saved, but they distinguish between a great crowd, which we just read about in verse 9, and the 144,000. The great crowd are saved people who remain on earth to inherit it, but the 144,000 are the ones who go to heaven. So my recommendation when witnessing to a Jehovah Witness is to first be aware of this distinction. Otherwise, you will be confused while talking to them. And secondly, use this to baffle them. Just staying within one chapter of the book of Revelation is enough to show to them their doctrine is wrong, and that should begin to cause them to question the lies that they have been taught by their cult. In verse 4 of Revelation 7, it says, quote, And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed out of every tribe of the sons of Israel. Now, the question to ask is whether or not this passage is to be taken literal or allegorical. If it is literal, then it is literally Jews, and the passage continues to depict 12,000 from the different tribes of Israel. This doesn't fit with their doctrine very well because they would think that that implies only literal ethnic Jews can go to heaven. However, if it is allegorical, then the question is, how should we understand the number 144,000 if we take it as an allegorical number? It simply cannot be both literal and allegorical at the same time. Obviously, the passage goes on to discuss 12,000 from various tribes of Israel, so the passage becomes very literal in its own context. This is problematic for their view. This point is simply to get their mind working as a warm-up, get their gears grinding a bit. They simply won't have an answer, and you shouldn't expect them to know what to say about that question, but it is used to cause them to start questioning what they have been taught by their cult. The big question is returning to verse 9. Remember that they claimed only 144,000 go to heaven and the rest remain on earth in the eschaton. The rest that remain on earth is what they call the great crowd, which are saved from judgment, but they don't go to heaven. Notice the reference of the great crowd in verse 9 and pick out where they are located. Reading Revelations 7, verse 9 from the New World Translation, again, it says, quote, "After this I saw and look, a great crowd, which no man was able to number, out of all nations and tribes and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, dressed in white robes, and there were palm branches in their hands." Unquote. Note that this crowd is standing before the throne and before the Lamb. This is significant to the Jehovah Witness because they know the Lamb is Jesus Christ, but he is supposed to be located in heaven, not on earth. The great crowd is supposed to be on earth, not in heaven. You can encourage a Jehovah Witness to continue reading the context of this chapter to confirm the location has taken place in heaven. For example, verse 11 will show, quote, "All the angels were standing around the throne, and the elders and the four living creatures, and they fell face down before the throne and worshiped God." Unquote. Now here we meet the elders and living creatures that are located before the throne. Back in chapter 4 of Revelation, these same characters are located in heaven. For example, in chapter 4, verse 1, it says, quote, "After this I saw and look an open door in heaven, and the first voice that I heard speaking with me was like a trumpet saying, 'Come up here, and I will show you a thing that must take place.'" Unquote. It goes on to introduce us to the elders in verse 4 and the living creatures in verse 6, all positioned before the throne. Chapter 5, verses 11 through 12 says, quote, "And I saw and I heard a voice of many angels around the throne, and living creatures and the elders, and the number of them was myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands. And they were saying with a loud voice, 'The Lamb who was slaughtered is worthy to receive the power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessings.'" Unquote. Notice that these verses we see the elders and the living creatures around the throne praising the Lamb who was slaughtered. This was clearly depicted in 4:1 as located in heaven. So when we return to chapter 7 and find a great crowd located before the throne along with the elders and the living creatures praising the Lamb, it is obviously in heaven. This is all going to be very confusing for the Jehovah Witness to see this for the first time. You have to remember that they have been lied to their whole life, or however long they've been in following this cult. They have made a lot of sacrifices, probably separated from their family because their cult has demanded such things. They have a lot wrapped up in their cult, and to question it is to risk losing all they have invested over these years. It also means they would have to swallow their pride and admit they were deceived. All the people they have trusted for the past few years or maybe their whole life have lied to them about the Bible. Of course, they will struggle with this concept and try to find a way to explain it away. Be patient and understanding of these things and be loving, but be firm and push this issue. They have never seen what the Bible teaches in its own context. They are only supposed to read the Watchtower publications and look up individual verses referenced in their cult's literature. They're not encouraged to read the Bible on their own and in its context. They have never seen the context of the verses they have read and been taught from. The purpose with these few verses is simply to cause them to begin questioning what they have been taught by their cult. Don't expect the immediate conversion or some profound change in their mind and an immediate desire for the Jehovah Witness to want to walk away from their cult. You probably will never see the same person again in your life, but if you could plant that seed of doubt that causes them to start searching the scriptures without the Watchtower filter, you got the victory. Trust God to complete the work in their life. They already are taught that the Bible is the Word of God, so they should understand that the Bible is authoritative for doctrine. Emphasize the Bible is true and can be trusted, but what they have been taught is wrong. Once they begin to question what they have been taught by their cult, they should logically begin to question the Bible version published by their cult. You could plant seeds along that topic as well. Throw out questions like, why does your organization need to produce an independent Bible version? Or why is it that no academic institution endorses that version? Or maybe, what are the scholarly credentials of those involved with translating this Bible version? If they were to honestly seek the answers to any of those questions, they would find out they should not trust the New World Translation version. So if you meet a Jehovah Witness, maybe you'll meet them at your doorstep. Don't slam the door in their face. Use the opportunity to give them some truth. I would recommend starting off the conversation with a question of something along the lines of, do you believe you will go to heaven? Or maybe, how do you think you will get to heaven? Something like that. However you phrase the question, the key point is to emphasize going to heaven. This should spark a good conversation because they have different views about going to heaven than mainstream Christian doctrine. The key point to remember is Jehovah Witnesses think only 144,000 go to heaven, while the great crowd remains on earth. The chapter that discusses this is Revelations chapter 7. Simply looking at the chapter in its own context will prove to the Jehovah Witness their doctrine is wrong about the topic. Once you can get them to question what they have been taught by their cult, you have planted that seed of doubt that should begin to grow if they are seriously searching for truth. You can water that seed with other questions about the New World Translation as well. Get them to doubt their cult. Get them to doubt what they have been taught. Get them to doubt their Bible version they read. Get them to hunger and thirst for truth so they will search it out. Pray with them that God will guide them to know truth and to discover truth. Offering to pray for them will give them an example of how to rely on God to lead them. And when praying in front of them, I would recommend using the term Jehovah God. This is just a simple method. It could be elaborated more, but I want to just give a simple suggestion that is easy and memorable. Nothing complex, nothing confusing. Thank you for tuning into Truthwatchers podcast. Remember to hit the subscribe button and share it with a friend for more fascinating facts. Check us out at truthwatchers.com because sound apologetics and exegesis of scriptures is important for all of God's children, as it is indicated in 3 John verse 4. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth.